Don, is this on? Oh, it's on. Amazing. Right. So I get to tell you something about the magic bit. My name is David Cotti. I'm on the Workspace ecosystem team. And I'll try and follow up a little bit on what Jay gave the demo of. Really, if you think about it, Jay's got a system of records, so something like ServiceNow and so on. Magic happens. We generate a bunch of notifications, and we push those to the user. That's great. But behind the magic, there is obviously something, nuts and bolts going on. Now, I feel a bit like Ms. Frizzle here because, the kids say, how do batteries work? And, batteries are complicated and nobody understands what they do, right? Little metal thing. And she goes on the bus, rainbows, unicorns, all that good stuff. And she ends up round about here. And, Wikipedia tells you the answer, right? So I'm going to try and do one better than read Wikipedia to you and tell you how this stuff works. Stick with me. Basic terms you should understand by the end of this presentation. System of record, an SOR, and a data integration provider. Really, really simple. The thing you want to talk to, like ServiceNow, is an SOR, and the thing you're going to use to talk to it is a DIP, or a data integration provider. All right? So if you remember this, you will stick with me through this deck. If you don't remember this, you'll be very confused about 5 minutes in. So make sure you get it. OK, we have Citrix Cloud. It's warm and fluffy and blue. And inside it, we have a service that gives you the UI that you're going to push out to an end user. Now, we also, of course, have systems of record like Concur in this case, and the user can go directly to those systems of record in their web browser as they do right now. But of course, what we want to do is give them those actionable notifications that Jay talked about before. So we have these services in Citrix Cloud, Microapp service, notification service, and we're going to bridge into Citrix Cloud with that data integration provider. And so the point here is a data integration provider speaks the API of the thing on the right such that the thing on the left can make those notifications. So the question you should now ask is, yes, but which notifications, and whom am I sending them to, and all that good stuff? So I'll give you a little example. Here is an expense report from our friend Stella. And $2,300, I don't know what she spent it on, office supplies. And maybe there's more than one person who can approve that, all right, because you might have multiple people who can say, yes, pay it out. Now, I'm going to add somebody else into the equation. This is my attempt at drawing. Sorry. But you get the point. It's a manager. And the reason this is important is because there's a whole bunch of these notifications. I don't know why. Stella spent an awful lot of money, or the same thing multiple times. And your pointy-haired boss says, I don't want all of these. This is crazy, right? I'm important. Only send me the ones that are over 10,000. That's a problem, because Concur is going to give you all of them. I can't set Concur up to just say only 10,000 and above. So what do? Well, the good news is that we can help you there because we can start thinking about the criteria about which notifications to generate and whom to send them to. Because what we are doing is using our own event generation engine based on a cache. The reason the cache is important is because, of course, we're now pulling data in. And to do that, we have that data integration provider. So pulling data into a cache does mean we get more flexibility. And it also means we can now use criteria from across different systems, so not just Concur, right? I can now federate across, say, Salesforce and Concur. I'm not sure what federation you do there, but you can maybe the account name in Salesforce and then something to do with the opportunity size plus some expense you made dealing with the customer. And so I can start generating these complex criteria to decide, well, pointy-head boss said he only wanted over 10K, and he only wants to hear about this particular customer, unless it's this badly behaved employee he wants to keep an eye on, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. All right? But it's a cache. What are we caching? Well, we don't pull every piece of data out of your target system, your system of record. We only pull the data that is active. And obviously, what do we mean by active? Well, let's say you're booking holiday. Clearly, the open holiday requests are active. Probably the ones that were approved in the last 6 months are active, but not the ones that were approved 5 years ago. Don't care. You can apply similar sorts of thinking to all of the other systems on screen there. So only cache the active data. How'd you get it? Well, we talked about reading it in. Remember that data integration provider again. What we're going to do is use a service account. And the reason that's important is because we're doing bulk reads. All right? You've got an account that is able to read for a whole set of users in your organization versus trying to pull on an individual basis. There are pros and cons to this. We'll talk about that later. Pull that into your cache. It's per tenant, so per customer. All right? And of course, it's encrypted. So all the kind of usual questions have sensible answers here. Now, Jay mentioned the synchronization here. Remember, because it's a cache, that means we're doing full sync probably once a day. We're doing an incremental sync, 5 to 15 minutes. Pick your numbers depending on how much data you're pulling across. But of course, it does mean it's not real time. So one of the important things you should take away from this presentation is if you have a notification coming in or being expecting to be generated from a record that's being modified, you won't get the notification straight away. And that's why Jay was doing that, hey, do an incremental sync now manually rather than waiting 2 minutes or 5 minutes, because it's not going to come up instantly. For most things, that doesn't matter, all right? Because at the end of the day, a PTO request delayed by 5 minutes, neither here nor there. Just keep in mind the use cases that you're thinking about, though. If you want to make something that needs notification within 2 seconds flat, this is not it. All right? And again, we'll talk tomorrow about some things we're thinking about in order to cope with more real time. Now, supposing I have that expense notification again. And supposing for some odd reason, I as the approver go off to Concur and manually go into my queue and I go, well, actually I'm going to hit approve here. That's fine, all right, because what we'll do is on the next incremental sync, we will go, I see you did that, that's fine, and I will make the card disappear. All right, so we do clean up after ourselves. Now, once you have a bunch of data from your cache, or in your cache rather, from your systems, then obviously you can do useful things with it. So, what is a Microapp? Well, PJ mentioned, obviously, the photocopier example. We're trying to get relatively simple workflows that are extremely common, that people want to get done. The way I like to think about it is you've got something you want to get done in 30 seconds flat, but because it's the target system where you're having to go through 20 different clicks, it takes you 5 minutes. So if you find tasks that should take 30 seconds but that do take 5 minutes, that's probably a good candidate. So, slightly contrived example here. Who knows what this might be? Good. Yes, Omar knows what it is. It's a Japanese wife, yes. Good. So when you're confronted with this in the early morning in Japan, and you go, what on earth do I do with this control panel? What is the one operation you actually want? Well, it's flush, right? There's no button for flush on there, by the way. It's on the toilet. But the point is, don't re-implement the monolith. In other words, what's the common case? The one common case is the flush button, right? So think about the fact you're trying to implement as a microapp the thing that people want to do all the time, not one of those buttons is change the temperature of the wash water. I don't care, right? I really don't need a microapp for that in this example.
It's too late.
It's what?
It's too late.
It's too late, exactly. There you go. So here we go. So you've seen this already in a couple of the other decks, but I want to point out a couple of things. When we talk about a microapp, right, a microapp does multiple things or can do multiple things. It can create a notification, which is just, hey, something happened. It can create an actionable notification. So in other words, it has buttons you can do things with. It can also be a user-initiated action. So, of course, I want to be notified of stuff, but if I want to book holiday, I don't wait for a notification to come in saying, hey, have you thought about booking holiday? I want to go book it. Right? And so the things on the top right are things that I want to initiate. All of those are things you can create inside a microapp. Further than that, when this blade comes out from the right, you might want to supply data. So again, think about the use case that Jay showed of putting that problem ticket. Right? That blade content is what we call a page. You can have multiple pages that come up in a flow in that blade. And so you can start designing a flow that says, well, you selected this in this drop-down, so I'm going to show you this page or whatever. Right. At some point, when the user clicks a button or creates a holiday request or whatever it is, they're going to write some data to the target system. At least we hope they are. How does that work? Well, again, here's my standard diagram, right? But now I'm going backwards. So the user has decided to click a button. It goes into that Microapp service. It goes into data integration provider. The DIP understands both the API of the thing you're trying to talk to and, of course, how to do auth. Auth kind of important here. Particularly since we're trying to do this in the context of the user that you have at the bottom right there. Okay, so think about it this way. If you looked at the audit logs of Concur, what you want it to say is David clicked the approve button, not Workspace did something for you. We don't really know who that was. Okay, and the way you do that is that Workspace is authorized to act on my behalf to do this right. So when we talk about OAuth as a protocol, that's where it's coming in. You need a protocol that allows you to do that authorization of a service to act on your behalf. All right. Now there's another interesting one here. So race conditions. It all stems, by the way, from the caching in the incremental sync. So supposing I have my famous $2,300 expense, and I've typed it in, there's Microapp there, so I've typed it in and created it. That's at time equals 0. A little while later, we have our incremental sync, goes and pulls the new data into the cache. Life is good. But a little while later, I go, oh dear, that expense report I just submitted wasn't 2,300 at all, it was 100K. Don't know how I made that mistake, but anyway. Time equals 10, I modify that in Concur. Now, because it's an incremental sync that happens periodically, the notification card that got created says 2,300. So what happens when the approver clicks approve? Is it 2,300 that got approved, or is it 100K? Because in Concur, the record says 100K, right? It's got the expense ID is 123, and the amount is now 100K. So does the approve button say, yep, it's all good, 100K, payout? Well, fortunately, people have thought about that. Seems like a bad idea. The system checks before we do that write back and says, hey, is it still $2,300? Or are we trying to commit fraud? And the answer is, if we're trying to commit fraud, then we'll just reject that and we'll surface the new card appropriately. So the sensible thing happens here. But the reason I tell you this is because it's important for you to get an idea of, if you like, the constraints you're operating under when you have a cache and an incremental sync. Next up. So we talked about you have these actions on that top right, a little panel, and Jay showed you can actually click into the actions listing to get a full listing of all the actions you can do. Unsurprisingly, people don't just reply to notifications. They actually want to get stuff done and kick things off. That is therefore another source of writing data back to your system of record. So we have a whole bunch of integrations, data integration providers that we built, and those are in box. All right, so I think, pretty sure this is all of them right now. We're actually building some at the moment, so there'll be more at GA. But, it's not everything. Concretely, there's going to be a whole load more that enterprise customers have. The average enterprise customer has something like 500 apps. All right, this number is not going to cut 500. And they're probably all different for different customers. Guess what? This is where you come in, because there's an opportunity where we can say, customer wants to get their weird, wonderful app into Workspace. They've got all these standard ones, but they've got this legacy one that nobody else uses. They need help. And so what we're trying to get you to be able to do after these 2 days is use the tools in order to create new data integration providers and new microapps. So how do you do that? So here's our Microapp service. This is Citrix Cloud again. Here's our cache. And here is our target system of record. And the ones that we're going to be assuming over these 2 days are going to be ones that have a nice web services API. All right? Now, I will caveat right now, not everything speaks JSON and REST. All right? I know that. Shoot me later. We have a thing called an HTTP integration. Unsurprisingly, that is something that understands JSON and REST on the right-hand side, speaks the appropriate language on the left-hand side. What you're going to be doing is basically teaching that how to talk to whatever system you think is appropriate. And what I mean by that is, yes, it speaks JSON, but it doesn't know what tables are in there. It doesn't know what fields are in there. It doesn't know which one is the primary key. It certainly doesn't know which one to update when they update a particular field in Microapp. All right? All of that will mean that you end up creating a dip that understands how to talk to this thing on the right that it's in green, and then you can configure and create microapps that use the data that's pulled in by this HTTP integration and, of course, writes back. Now, as I said, not everything speaks JSON and REST, so fear not. We have considered that. Right now, the solution to that is, funnily enough, wrap it up in something that does. And of course, the naysayers will say, oh, this is terrible, it's not going to work. I would point out, however, that it's another opportunity for you to make money. Because when you have a customer that says, I really want this integrated into Workspace, the answer is, that's a great idea. I will also need to create this yellow thing as well. That will be another line item on the bill. Okay? And if there are customers in the room, then apologies, that is the truth. But anyway, and we'll talk a little bit tomorrow about how we are going to come to terms with that problem in more detail. So stick with me. I'm going to sort of wrap it up because I'm conscious that there's coffee, and coffee is probably more interesting than I am. But here's what I want you to remember. So number one, we talked about, don't re-implement the monolith, right? So photocopier, Japanese toilet, whatever it is, just make sure that a microapp is a subset of the application's functionality. It is not re-implement the whole application. If you are re-implementing the whole application, you're probably doing something wrong. Next one, dips, SORs. Dips are the things that connect you, that bridge between the system of record and Citrix Cloud. Easy peasy. There is a cache, there is incremental sync, and we have our own event generator. All right, so this does mean that we can start looking at creating conditions under which events are generated that are far more detailed and interesting than you might expect from the target system. Fourthly, auth, kind of important, security. Reads are bulk via service account. It is a read-only, or rather an account that only has read-only permissions. Okay, so you don't have a all-powerful rights to everything and anything service account. That would be bad. Writes are therefore done in the context of each user. And again, keep in mind, if you have a system that does not have the ability to authorize me to act on behalf of a user, then we need to start thinking about different ways of doing authentication and authorization. So again, stuff to talk about now. And the final one, you remember my dashed yellow box. My dashed yellow box is you can wrap stuff up that doesn't speak REST into something that does. Clearly that is more work. I would argue again that more work, provided it's reasonable, is actually a good thing. With that, I will stop. And you're free to ask questions. I think we will have microphones if you wish. So if you're brave, you can stand up and talk at me. If you're not feeling brave, there is a Slack channel that you can go into and ask and debate with your colleagues. And then some kind soul who can see Slack, because I can't, will be able to tell me what on earth the question was. Yes?
I just want to make sure you're not invalidating a cache when you perform an action. Is that correct?
Correct. So when you perform an action, so the question was, are you invalidating a cache when you perform an action? So what you're doing is you're writing through to the system of record, and you're saying, hey, this is the real thing. And of course, if you write, you can also make sure your cache is up to date or just invalidated, flushed, whatever you want to call it, right? So you do the right thing, in essence. Yes. Other questions? Yes.
How do you manage version of different APIs? For example, Jira could update a new version of the API, and how you manage that?
So how do you manage API versioning of the target system, of the system of record, yeah? The cop-out answer is to say sensible systems have backwards compatibility in their APIs. But we all know that's not quite true for everything. So the answer is you have your integration that speaks to a particular API endpoint. You hope that they don't update the API endpoint without telling you at all. You should bump a version there. If there's no way of telling the API is up to date, there's not much I can do, right? Because it's transparent. Clearly, you can create a new integration, a new dip per API version if that's what you have to do. That's fine. You can have multiple integrations running in a single tenant that would talk to different endpoints for target system. There is, one of the things we'll talk about tomorrow is the need actually for Microapp versioning. because if you have two different integrations, that's fine, right? Two different dips, that's fine. But then you want to take your microapps from one to the other. You've got to make sure that the fields you're using from the first integration still exist in the second. That's a more interesting problem. And cards on table, we're still working on that, right? So that's the more interesting part than actually the back-end one in some senses. Yeah, Robert, that's one you can get a microphone to.
How does the communication to the on-prem system of record work?
That is a good question. I would say I'll punt that till tomorrow, but that would be cheating. So, two things. Today, right, what you are building with today, we are saying it is SaaS systems only, all right? So there's got to be a public IP somewhere. What we will be doing is, and actually in our dog feeding environment today, we have, those of you familiar with cloud connectors, we have what we're calling a universal cloud connector that's currently kind of in development. That's in our dog feeding environment. That would effectively open a channel between Citrix Cloud and your on-prem system, at which point you can have your data integration provider running in the cloud, and then you just go straight down to on-prem and do the right thing. Clearly, the point about having a cloud connector is so that the customer does not have to just, hey, open up a firewall port and it'll all be fine, right? Public access to your SAP server sounds like a great idea. So that's the plan for on-prem, but I will just clarify that that's not, when we GA this, I would expect on-prem to be kind of in a tech preview form, all right? So baby steps. Other questions? Yes, and Robert can get to you, I think. We've solved the microphone runner problem.
When you use the O2 authentication, so how does the IDP can refresh the token?
How does the IDP refresh the OAuth token? So what, when the token's expired, you mean just in general?
Exactly. For example, Google, you have 1 hour.
Yeah. So
duration.
I'm going to give an answer, and I'm going to hope that my colleagues in the room will correct me on it. But as far as I'm aware, you can actually trigger a refresh in the sense that you can just go get a new token periodically. So yeah. Oh, that was a thumbs up. I thought that you telling me I was wrong. It's always comforting when somebody says that. So yeah, we have a credential wallet in Citrix Cloud, and that will take care of, if you need to do a token refresh, that's fine. The other thing to point out actually is, when you want to, as a user, authorize someone to act on your behalf, normally you'll see, let's say you add an app to Facebook, or something like that. It will give you a prompt that says, hey, do you want to allow this app to do X, Y, and Z, right? And that's the same kind of prompt you will get when you are asked to, hey, authorize Workspace to act on your behalf. Some systems you can actually effectively pre-authorize a whole bunch of people in your organization so that they don't get that prompt. But in other cases, they will see a prompt the first time they try to do anything. Other questions? Yes. Yes, we have a microphone. We're doing well.
Thanks. So it's not technical, but more all the Jira or other application, they have people like UX designer that will try to create a visual identity of their tools. With this API management, we just remove this visual identity of their tools. Are they happy to let us go to the API?
So I think I'd rephrase the question to be, hey, are we replacing all these systems of record ourselves? Are we putting them out of business? Is that?
No.
Okay.
It's just about the visual identity of their tools. They like to make a tool friendly for their end users. And we remove this because we don't need that UI.
We are. And you can look at that two ways. You can either say, Citrix is saying your app sucks and you should put everything in Workspace, right? That's not what we're saying. Because if we did say that, then I'd be telling you to re-implement all the functionality of the app in Workspace. And we're not doing that. We're just saying the few use cases that you should be able to achieve in 30 seconds, right, those are the ones where we should be thinking about integrating them. Now, you could argue again that vendor ought to be making those super easy to do in 30 seconds. To be honest, I think it's probably hard because you've got an interface where you've got 1,000 functions and really you're only trying to find 2. How do you make that simple? It's not always easy to do. So yes, you are, if you like, their visual language has been lost to some extent, but for many of the 998 other use cases, they're still going to go to that app, right? So I guess I'm not too worried about that displacement problem. Other questions?
You've got questions coming in on Slack, so you can check the monitors. Oh, just wanted to mix it up for you, David.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I'll have to learn to read again now. So where are we going to start? Do we support webhooks for real-time notification with Workspace? Blah, blah, blah. So webhooks, we'll talk about tomorrow about the roadmap that we have. But if you want right now, the answer is no. All right? But absolutely, the reason it's on the roadmap because I think that's a really important thing to do. Because real-time is something people are going to want to do for certain systems. All right? Martin says, when Converge is over, will you get to keep your instances? And take your work home. So there's two things here. One is taking your work home, we have the ability to export and import. So we will be able to take that out. And I think it comes out as JSON, so it's quite simple. And we can store that for you. The reason I'm being cagey here is because obviously it's pre-GA software. And so what I don't want to do is promise you that it'll all just, you export today and you import tomorrow and nothing will have changed. It will have changed. I prefer to be, a little bit cautious about promising the earth. Will you get to keep your instances, therefore? No, but we do want to make sure that everybody who signs up for our developer program, which, welcome, you are it, gets a test instance. So if you ask me the same question in a few weeks' time, the answer should be yes, you get a test instance. We will have constraints on that. Okay, so there'll be things like, hey, if you don't use it for 30 days, it will go away. Okay, but it will be all the sensible kind of things rather than, no, you have to jump through 3 hoops, travel to Santa Clara, and do something else in order to get a test instance. That's not the way we work. All right, if you're in the developer program, you get a test instance, you get to play with it. Okay. When an action fails for any reason, is the user notified? Yes, is the short answer. There's all sorts of interesting questions about retries, and because it's not real time, how long do you wait for the target system to kind of not respond or to fail? Where do you put the card in the meantime? Come and talk to me offline about that. There's a lot of thinking been done in terms of where the card goes and does it come back again. Can the platform be used to track workflows to completion, says Joe? Trying to think. So if you are approving something, then you've hit approve. In the target system, you've hit approve, then it's done, right? If you hit approve in Concur, it goes away. Now, I guess you can go into Concur, you can see what the audit record was, all right? And in that sense, you'd have to go into the target system. Now, what you can do is you can look at the logs that you've got in Workspace to determine, hey, what happened? But as an end user, I think we're operating on the principle of, if in the target system you'd have clicked a button, and that would have meant the whole thing went away because you completed the task, that's the same kind of principle we're operating on in Workspace. Does that help? No? OK, let's talk offline then. I probably got the wrong question. OK. When a notification is sent as a result of a change, taking care of it, does that notification state this is a replacement? No. Rich, I don't know the answer to that question. I'm hoping somebody else will correct me on Slack, because I'm going to claim ignorance. Alex says, any thoughts on a GraphQL connector? Yes. We don't have one, but yes, we have thoughts. If you want to ask me what thoughts or give me more clarification on what you're looking for, by all means, let us know. What regions will the control plane be in? I'm hoping somebody's already replied to that one. Has somebody replied to that thread? Please tell me.
Yes.
Yes, OK, somebody was kind of, does Workspace have a dark mode? Talk to the design team, and they can tell you whether it does or will have. I'm assuming not yet, but I could be wrong. Will users be able to sleep or control cards to become relevant? Yes, that is the plan. So when you get into your test instances, which you can, you will see in your feed there is a little drop down that says, hey, how do I want to sort my cards? And you can have date and time or relevancy. And the system will learn the relevancy to you as an end user. You can also do things like, hey, I only want to see cards from Concur. None of the other systems I've got connected. All right, so you can start doing that. The snoozing of cards, I believe I'm right in saying, is something we want to do, but we don't have yet. Looking around for nodding of head. Yes, Rado knows the answer to this. OK, who creates microapps? Just tenant admins or end users as well? Today, it is admins, or developers, of course, right? Because you can, I guess, developer can create an admin and then, developer can create a microapp and a dip, and then provide that to an admin who can import them. All right, so it depends what you mean by create, but the ability to, if you like, instantiate or import is an admin thing. When it comes to end users, Rado, I think, will possibly mention this as well. Today, end users don't get access to the builder. All right, so the builder that Jay flashed up there is an admin thing. We are looking at how we can make the builder available to non-admin users. That's not there today, so you have to be an admin today. I'm going to look at Don in the back and kind of how we're doing on time, because I'm conscious that there is coffee.
We are at 10:31.
I'm at 10:31. I don't know what that time means.
That means that you're done.
I'm done. Yes. I've survived. If an end user stored relevancy, can it be erased? Mark, we should talk. I'm not sure I understand the question in fairness, but maybe me being a little stupid. So let's talk on Slack about that. I will let you guys go. If you have other questions, come on Slack, come and find me. Rado will resume after the break, where he will take you, if you like, to the actual live view of the architecture. In other words, how do you actually go and use this builder? And then you really get your hands dirty, because he will have taken you through the demo, and then you will actually do it. So this is where the rubber hits the road, as they say in America. With that, thank you very much. Enjoy your coffee.